My mom, she kicks me out of my house just so my brother's girlfriend can take my room and use it as an office because she has some booming business that's going to take over and they're going to make a lot of money out of it. Well, guys, newsflash, that never happened. And it ended up losing them a bunch of money, and now years later, they see how successful I've gotten, and then all of a sudden, they want to get in contact with me again. Well, you know what I told them? I told them to kick rocks. But that's not all I told them. Many people won't understand what it means to be neglected as a kid. When I told a friend of mine this, she just told me that I was only entitled and that my mom raised and treated me the best way that she could. Well, I'm not friends with her anymore, and I didn't tell anyone else about my feelings after hearing that from someone who was supposed to understand me, and where I was coming from. So, when I say my mother, I mean just her. My dad's dead, and though I don't have a lot of memories about him since he passed before I was even a teenager, but I know I was a happier person when he was alive. He was an amazing father and did not make me feel like that average child that I was. I miss him sincerely, and after his death, I fell into what I termed the Great Despair. It was hard for me to eat or sleep, and I cried a bunch. But after reading a few articles and watching some TikTok, I learned to deal with my grief. And now, when I think about my dad, I remember the happy moments I spent with him instead of focusing on his absence. For some reason, I've always felt my mom saw me as more of a burden she was forced to carry with. See, there was a point where I learned that I was conceived out of wedlock, and when I heard some of the stories my aunt said when they came over to laugh and gossip, I understood that my mom only got married because she was pregnant with me. Lord knows that she might have been extremely successful as a career-driven woman, but there was no time for her to achieve such goals until later on, after she gave birth to my younger brother Joe and me. See, Joe was still a child when my father passed, so I doubt he would even remember him at all, but he didn't even need my dad's presence because my mom loved him to the moon and back. Now that I'm all grown up, this doesn't bother me as much, thankfully, but I do remember a time when I tried everything in my power to get my mom to see me as more than a child who eats her food and goes to school with her money. I was average in everything as a kid and a young teenager, and yes, it did mess with my self-esteem. You know, looks, smarts, athletics, I didn't stand out at all, and believe me when I say that I tried. I'm a natural tomboy, and decided to put in the effort to look more feminine, but there was almost no difference, though the phase spiked my mom's interest. I don't know if it was because I decided to switch from jeans to gowns, but it was nice to have my mom's attention for some time. Of course, it didn't last very long, because I did not last with the gowns and heels and all that makeup. Well, there was a school and sports, and I didn't do extraordinarily well in any of my courses, both elementary and high school. I even begged for tutorials and tutors, and at a point after hearing that some students needed them to unlock their full potential, but I got nothing. Almost the same story happened with sports, and I gave up on trying to impress my mom. You see, later on, it turned to resentment because she made sure to remind me that I was a disappointment to her and a failure to the family as the first child. I didn't become rebellious like most kids who felt that way, though some of my actions were actually regarded as rebellious for some reason. I learned to live with the label of being a disappointment, and the day I left my house for college was the happiest day of my life. At that time, I had grown to like writing, and a high school teacher had recommended trying writing as a career path. She even introduced me to a few programs in which I excelled after participating, and it's one of the reasons I managed to enter college with average grades and no athletic or extraordinary skills. My brother, Joe, on the other hand, had a completely different life. Even when he was born, my parents seemed to cherish him more than they did me. I was told that they needed to focus more of their attention on the new child in the family, as they did when it was just me. I don't know. Something deep within me knew it wasn't going to be the case, and oh boy, was I right. Both of my parents had seen that Joe was good at school, and before my father passed, he had kept some money in the bank for either college or football training, and both which Joe was good at. My mom invested most of her time in Joe, attending almost every game, debate, and competition that he had. I detested her more because of it and eventually stopped caring about my life and future, till I discovered that I was very good at writing. My relationship with Joe is not something to write home about either. He doesn't really care about me, and sometimes I think my mother is at fault here. We had a good relationship growing up, though a small part of me resented him because of all the attention he got. But I was a kid, and when I began thinking properly, the resentment vanished and I tried to build a good relationship with my brother. It was more difficult than I thought it would be, and at the time I thought it was because my brother had known that I secretly disliked him. See, it was nothing like that, though, and after seeing my mom talk to him about how useless I was, I understood why he tended to avoid me. Now that we're both adults, it's basically the same. He doesn't call or check up on me, just like my mom, and I'm fine with it at this point. I have other family members, the ones who supported my career and got me to where I am today, and I'm content with this. I think the highlight of everything was when I got kicked out after I returned from my very first book signing. Now, after college, like most writers, I did not have a good place to live, and I was using my money to drive my work. Since I started out as an independent author, it was just me and Mother at the time, and Joe was in and out of the house. My brother was lucky enough to get spotted and scouted in college, and he played football and got some good dough for some time. He also had a girlfriend, now his wife, Sandra. She's one of the most annoying people I've ever met, but we'll get to her later. So, they both lived with my mother and me before I got kicked out, and now that I think about it, I would have moved out because living with them was unbearable. Joe had gotten married early. I remember when we were all discussing it at the time, he had mentioned not wanting to wait to make Sandra his. At that point, I had not really met Sandra, but it didn't matter to me. At that age, he would have recently gotten out of college if he had attended, and most men I knew tended to take their time first to get their bearings, but he had mentioned having more than enough money. Even at the beginning of his career, and I'm sure he had believed he would earn even more money as he kept playing, which is most likely what would have happened if he had not been in such an accident. The wedding, it had come and gone, and I wasn't even invited to it. He had spoken about getting married, and I hadn't known how I felt about it since he was still young, and while I was away, he got married anyways, and I won't lie by saying it didn't hurt me at all, because it had, but I could live with it. And now, anytime I think about that time, it serves me as a reminder that my family would not care less if they heard that I was in an accident. Just like my brother was 3 years ago, and a few months after his wedding, that's when, he doesn't really play football because of it anymore, an accident had sealed his fate. And as devastated as my mom was about it, we learned to accept that his legs just weren't ever going to be as good as they used to be. That's not to say that Joe is wheelchair-bound per se, or unemployed. I mean, he does work as a remote accountant because, as book smarts, he does have a few connections. He's clearly making less money than before, but less is better than nothing. All four of us, my mom, myself, Joe, and Sandra, have lived together for a while, and I was still struggling, while Joe had to move back in because he could not pay the rent anymore. At the time, a lot of his money had gone into therapy, trying to get his legs back to their initial state, but after getting cut off from his team because of it, he gave up. Living with all three of them was hellish because I was treated like I wasn't even a member of the family. And when I complained, my mom was always there to remind me that I should not be living with the family. And after my very first signing, guys, I got kicked out because Sandra needed some space for a business she wanted to start up to help the family, aka my bedroom. I'd begged my mom and even told her about the book signing I'd gone for, but nothing. So I ended up leaving, and I'm now a successful author and scriptwriter, which are a few of the other things that I've done these past few years. I've also found someone that I most likely will settle down with, because he's too good to be true. And now to the crux of the issue, right? My mother had called me a few days ago, saying something about the family being broke after Sandra had misused the money. I don't know much because my mother had not said anything of substance, only demanded that I send her money. So I told her I would think about it and ended the call immediately, and it has been on my mind ever since. I spoke to my friend about it and decided that I would pay my family a visit to find out what exactly was happening over there. Once I get more information, I'll update, for you guys. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And yes, I do have multiple updates for you on this story, and things are about to take a really dramatic turn. Guys, if you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button underneath this video. It does help support the channel a lot, and I do appreciate that, guys. Here is the first update. Update number 1. Hey! Well, it's me, and I'm back. I visited yesterday. In summary, Sandra had misused most of the family's savings, and they were close to being broke. If that wasn't enough, they were currently in debt. It's surprising how one person can cause so much damage, but that's Sandra. Well, I guess I didn't know her that well, because I barely lived with her or even knew her before she became a part of the family. But the little I'd seen convinced me that she was mainly just a pretty face, which drew my brother to her. The funny part about the entire situation is that nobody was really upset with Sandra after what she did. Or at least they didn't seem like they were too angry with her. It was like one of those bad things happen to good people scenarios, which makes me mad. Then there was the fact that all three of them gave off the aura that I was meant to help them with their financial problems. Like it was my responsibility, or like I was the reason why they were in their current predicament. I'd gotten out of the house in anger, wondering how I could have possibly thought anything substantial would come out of meeting with them. So, what exactly had Sandra done that cost the family a large amount of money? By that, I mean both Joe and my mother's savings. See, she had started a small investment firm after reading about it and talking to a few contacts. And with my mother's help and Joe's previous influence, she started out well. It was a small firm with mainly family and friends, but Sandra was in charge. I don't know what happened exactly, but they started to have issues with their profits and releasing interest to investors. Before my family knew it, not only had they lost their money, but they were officially in debt as well, and being unable to pay some clients what they had invested. A small part of me thinks that Sandra was responsible for what happened. I've never really liked her, mainly because she reminds me of a master manipulator whenever I see her. Joe is one of the most level-headed people that I know. Despite our not being close siblings, it makes me wonder how he was quick to get married to someone he had not even known for 2 years. Let me not even mention how many times she managed to sweet-talk her way out of doing any house chores, leaving me to do most of the work. Yeah. Guys, there was even a time when she thought she was pregnant, and Mother made sure she was treated like a queen, only that the doctors disproved everything in 6 weeks. My relationship with Sandra is much worse than the one I have with my mother, and believe me, when I say that I never thought I'd say something like that, I mean she's 3 years younger than me. Yet, guys, she's literally the most disrespectful woman I've ever seen. Again, I don't know if my mom's responsible for that because they're very close. At the same time, I can't understand how a person can be so hateful to someone they haven't even met. In a way, I'm glad I'm not so close to my family. At least my husband would not have to deal with people with that kind of behavior, particularly my mother and sister-in-law. So Sandra sends me a text a few hours ago. I wasn't planning on helping them because I wasn't a part of their mess, and most importantly because they never would have reached out to me if I wasn't as successful as I am today. She mentioned that the police were now on their necks because of the debt. I sent her a text as well, relaying my thoughts to her. I wasn't going to help a family that kicked me out because they thought I would amount to anything. I know what I'm doing is the right thing, and no one can even talk to me about the decision, but at the same time, I can't help but feel bad for them. Maybe this is just my guilt talking. I hope things get better for them because, well, if they expect any form of help from me, yeah, they won't be getting it, that's for sure. Update number 2. I have good news and I have bad news. Well, the bad news is more in the past now because it's been resolved, though it's given me one of the biggest scares I've ever had. But I'll start with the good news because it's the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. Remember when I said I had someone special? Well, I got engaged recently, and both he and his family have been planning a small wedding this past week. His name's Paul, and yes, I don't want to say so much about him, except that I can tell you our life together will be amazing, and yes, the new family I said I had is his family. I've known them for a few years now, and even before I moved out of my house. My soon-to-be mother-in-law helped me contact my current agent, who is the biggest fan of my work. I met Paul during a dinner I was invited to, along with his sister Claire. My relationship with Paul had been on and off, mostly because of work, but, well, everything got sorted. Now, the bad news, that's not really bad news. I had some publicity for some time, and I don't know where it stemmed from, but it ruined a lot of me for the past few months. Someone had mentioned that I turned the bad experience of the people who trusted me into bestsellers, and someone else confirmed it, and before I knew it, there came the horrible articles and clips. Some people even started to lift quotes from my novel, saying that it was a person's secret I used as my inspiration. I'd say the worst part about this was that I had planned to start up a small podcast, where people would pour out their bottled feelings because, before Paul and his family, I didn't know how much I'd bottled up inside of me, and how much it was affecting me. It wasn't fully public, but myself and my team had made mention of it a few times, so it was another area my fans could easily target. Well, I was devastated for days, and my agent had promised that it would roll over and that I felt the way I did because it was my first experience with bad press. She was right. Of course, but it didn't make it less painful. I had the lowest sales this month and the least engagement as well. Paula had been there to comfort me, and in a short time I saw a video of him on the internet advocating for me. He had taken it down in a short while, but it had served its purpose. Plus, my agent doing her best to make this a thing of the past. Well, it's working. Though it is slow, and I was informed that the person responsible for the bad publicity could be tracked down. But what did it matter? It was probably someone who thought that they could do some damage to a new author from the comfort of their own home. Well, as for family, I honestly have not heard from them ever since I replied to Sandra. I was very surprised because I had expected them to keep bothering me. Given the way that they had demanded the money when I visited, it's a good thing, I guess. At least they got the message, and it's not like I would have even had the time for their nonsense with what I had going on in the past month. Anyways, I'll update you guys in a bit. Update number 3. I know who tried to sabotage my career, guys. Well, I wonder why I didn't guess it earlier, and I won't say it immediately. I don't know if it's obvious at this moment, but it will be clear at the end of this update. I had not cared to know before, but Paul himself had dug into the case, and I appreciate him telling me about it. My priorities, they've never been clearer, and I'll make sure to get back at them for what they did to me. Anyways, I've contacted Joe at some point. I can't remember when exactly. Despite promising myself not to get involved, I could not have total peace of mind until I knew exactly how my family was doing. Joe and I had set up a meeting at a cafe in the middle of both of our homes, and what I saw was shocking. He looked weaker than I'd ever seen him, and I felt like the slightest push would drive him over the edge. It was a sad sight, one I'm not sure I want to describe, and Joe had told me that things were bad back home. Every cent he made was taken from him to settle the debts accumulated by the firm. So, he had to take up another job and was now having multiple sleepless nights. I had to ask what my mother and sister-in-law were doing, and he mentioned that they were waiting for me to help out. Sandra had tried getting a job, but she had no college degree and no work experience that would be of help to her. My mom, on the other hand, she had initially begged her friends for money before growing tired of it, and it was at that moment that I was moved to help out. Not because I was interested in assisting my mother or Sandra in any way, but because Joe was working himself to an absolute early grave. But he had ruined everything by accusing me of being a terrible human being for not helping out sooner before, he began to work so hard. I was moved to apologize, and so I did. But he proceeded to cause a scene in the cafe before storming off. I'd stayed in my car for some time, wondering what to do next before going home to think things through. I was surprised to see Paul, who was usually at work during the day. He had told me what he had found out, and I felt very stupid after hearing what all he had to tell me. Well, apparently Sandra had created a fake account and was responsible for spreading the news. I'm not sure who the others were, but they could have easily been her friends or people that she had paid to back her up and make things worse for me. I don't know if Joe and my mom were in on everything, but I didn't bother thinking things through. The following day, I had paid them a visit. Sandra was the one who answered the door, and you know what? She was very, very surprised to see me, and her expression eventually morphed into concern about how I've been these past few months. In that instance, I knew Paul was right. Sandra would have never cared about how I'd been faring, even if I'd been in an accident, guys. Unless, I don't know. Maybe, just maybe, she was somehow responsible for it. Yeah. And I was going to give her the joy of hearing that I was in total pain for days, thinking that my career, was over. I had even started crying, not even sure if it was fake or if I still felt the pain of almost losing everything I worked for. I was ushered into the house and she left to get me something to drink. And that's when Joe came down the stairs. He was still upset about our meeting the previous day, and I apologized again, before Sandra returned, telling him that I've been through a lot since they last saw me. Well, guess what? The expression on Joe's face was more than enough to tell me that he was in on what happened and what had been done to me. And while I don't know for sure, my best guess is that my mother was as well. She might have even orchestrated the entire thing while Sandra carried it out. So, surprisingly, I kept my cool, telling them that while things were rough for me, I had gotten engaged and the party was to announce it to everyone soon. Sandra's face returned to default, and one I was used to, always frowning, appearing hateful and displeased. See, Joe was very much surprised that I, gotten engaged to someone, but that was one of my concerns. I had invited them to the party, promising to help them out with their financial situation after the party was over. Like that was really going to happen. All I wanted was for them to be there, and I'd even mentioned that a few potential investors would be present, and that I would put in a good word for Sandra, apologizing once again for not helping out sooner, of course. Truth be told, there was no engagement party planned before I'd visited, but it was long overdue. Honestly, plus what I'd planned for my family was going to take place during the party. They'll get what they deserve for messing with me. Final updates. Hey guys, it was fun while it lasted. Anytime I think back at that moment, I can't help but laugh because what happened at the party was so perfectly executed. I can't believe that it was only a thought 2 weeks ago. So, as soon as I got home after my visit, I went to tell Paul everything that happened. He was upset, but when I'd managed to get my plans out, he had perfected it, and I could only hope it went well. Then there was the planning of the engagement party, and I remember dreading it back then because I wasn't a fan of planning anything. Thankfully, I had Claire, my sister-in-law from my soon-to-be husband's side and soon-to-be in-laws, who were more than happy to help me take on the responsibility. The party hall was ready days before the stipulated days, and all I had to do was ensure that my family attended. I asked Paul if any of the guests that he had invited were willing to pretend to be an investor, and after talking to a few people, we had managed to find somebody who was wealthy enough to convince my family, and who was willing to play along. I'd make sure to do my research on the guest, and, well, when I'd seen that he indeed had a good business attached to his name, made sure to inform my family that he was one of the investors that I'd found. I mentioned that he would be at the party as well, and that it would benefit them if they were in attendance. I'd gotten a thank you, affirming that they would be present at the party. It was enough to keep me happy all throughout the day. On the day of the engagement party, I'd specifically instructed the security at the entrance not to allow a single member of my family in, and even mentioned holding them in their custody if they resisted. The guest, whose name was Isaac, was to go out and speak to them since he was one of the major reasons that they were attending the party. See, I knew for a fact that they could not care less about the party itself, so I was going to give them the man that they wanted. That's right. The only difference was that Isaac was not going to tell them a single thing that they wanted to hear. The party was in full swing when my family arrived, and the announcement of my engagement had even been made, further proving my point that they did not care as much as they should have. Even my mother was present, which was surprising. I was alerted as soon as they were at the venue, and I made sure to step outside to guests, to greet them. The guests that loitered around the premises while taking a peek at the security officers who had stopped my family from passing the gate. My mother had even yelled my name as soon as she spotted me, but I acted like I didn't hear a single thing. In fact, I made eye contact with her and Sandra. So soon, Sandra joined in, yelling my name, attracting attention to the three of them. So guys, I excused myself and went back inside, unable to hold in my laughter. My phone had a few missed calls from each of them, but I did not get back into a call. Well, Paul had told Isaac what to do, and unknown to my family, they were being recorded. So I'll go ahead and keep this part brief. Isaac had introduced himself to my family from the other side of the gate, informing them that I had told him that they ran an investment firm. Hearing the enthusiasm was something I'll never forget because Isaac was quick to put an end to their hopes within seconds. He had told them he knew that they were in a serious debt and that they were horrible people with whom that he would never do business with. He had mentioned telling his circle of friends and colleagues not to invest in the firm either. I hadn't told him to do that. I guess Paul had told him everything because Isaac had spoken in pure anger. So Sandra had called me as soon as Isaac was done ripping him apart, demanding an explanation. So, I don't know, I told her just go home. When she swore to cause havoc at the party, reminding her that she was responsible for spreading lies on the internet. Yeah. She was quiet when I told her that I would take legal action if she did not comport herself, then asked her to give the phone to my mother. I had told my mom that I wasn't interested in being members of her family anymore, wishing her well and promising her prison if she ever came near my new family and me again. And since then, I haven't heard from them. Unfortunately, I don't really know if they've dealt with the debt problem, and I really can't be bothered. Paul and I have plans to move out of the city and start our lives somewhere new. I'll miss Claire most especially, but I promised a visit a lot. Plus, I have an idea for a new series inspired by the events of my life these past few months. Anyways, I can't wait to see what life has in store for me and my soon-to-be husband. Alright guys, let's talk about today's story. I want to know, if you were in OP's position and you were kicked out of your house just like OP was, would you get revenge on the family as well? I want to know if you think OP went too far, or if you think everything was justified. Guys, if you want to drop that down below in the comment section, that would be awesome. My name is Mr. Reddito, and if you guys are new to the channel, I do something similar to this every day. It's different type of stories, mother-in-law dramas, in-law dramas in general, HOA stories, wedding disasters. I mean, I really cover it all. Guys, if you want to be a part of this once again, hit that subscribe button. I hope you have a fantastic day. Whatever you're trying to accomplish, just go for it. I'll catch you guys tomorrow, and of course remember, It's cool to be kind. See ya.